My name's Gordon Sayers. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at SoConnect. My primary role within the business is really just operational delivery of everything that we do within SoConnect. We're a service business first, and our focus is always on providing the best level of service to all of our customers and their users. Security is paramount in absolutely everything we do. We live and breathe it. So that is why most of our webinars have got some sort of security angle on them. And I'll pass you on to Ewan now, as that is his forte within the business. Ewan.
Yes, I'm Ewan Stewart, and I'm CTO at SoConnect, and my role at SoConnect is all about helping customers and businesses put together an IT strategy for their business to meet their business objectives, and to make sure there's a security strategy to accompany that, and to make sure that the company remains secure throughout that strategy.
Excellent. We're going to have as we go on through the slides, there's going to be a couple of polls where we're just going to ask everyone to have a quick poll just to see your views on certain things. So when those come up, if you just give us a quick answer, we'll wait 30 seconds or so as everyone answers them, just to get results on those. So a recent statement from Sir Jeremy Fleming, the GCHQ director in the UK. The crime that anyone is most likely to suffer is a cybercrime, which should be a bit unnerving for everyone, but it's it's a fact, and that fact is borne by all the data that GCHQ and government collate on everything that's going on through all the different police forces throughout the UK. Cybercrime is the one that's the highest on the list. So, first poll, starting straight off for everyone. Has anyone in the meeting today ever fallen victim to a cybercrime? And Claire's just going to kick that poll off. Let's see. So there we are, some initial results. It's more people than not so far. I'll let that the results keep on coming through in that as we just move on to the next slide. If everyone's still got the poly thing up, if you could just make sure you're giving us a bit of an input on that. So why cybersecurity matters. Most cyber incidents are the result of scatterbrain approach with bad actors, such as brute force and credentials, phishing emails. We all get our phishing emails, whether it's private or to your private email or your work email, and all of them are a threat, and it's something that we as an MSP see a huge amount of, and it's our job. One of our primary responsibilities is to be aware of the threat and come up with different methods of protecting our customers. Again, Ewan has spent a huge amount of time in using his knowledge and experience in developing this. So Ewan, just on to yourself for how we've approached this.
Yeah, companies generally hold all their sensitive information in digital format these days on local storage, cloud, or SaaS applications. This data needs to be protected, and all businesses are aware of this. But it's just about making sure that businesses have taken the necessary steps to ensure that it is. Because at the end of the day, cyber criminals are out there just to make money. That's the long and short of it. They know that their efforts are best served in the SME space because they have a high likelihood of return compromising a business in the SME space. So we're there just to make sure that we can help with that.
So yeah, one of the reasons I think that we're all most likely to are more likely to be a victim of a cybercrime than anything else is because of how relatively easy it is. There's no threat to the bad actors out there. They can sit behind the keyboard and do all of their work from there. There's no risk for them really in terms of the arrest by the police by going out and trying to rob a bank or a shop or any other sort of crime. So that's why it's growing, and it's only going to continue to grow. So figures, we're in the IT industry, so we are inundated with figures, both data we collect ourselves and data that we're supplied with by our suppliers and from what goes on in the industry. So Ewan, these are some of the figures that you and Claire have come up with.
Yeah, these are just some high-level figures to look at. So 4.5 million is the figure of the cost of data breaches in the UK. Up again year on year, and we've seen this continuously rise over the last few years. 39% of all businesses have reported a breach in the last 12 months. Again, this figure is actually supposed to be 50% by 2025. So again, some highlighted figures there that are pretty scary. A cyber attack takes place every 11 seconds in the UK. And nearly every business, again, whilst they're aware they need to adopt a cybersecurity strategy, it's estimated that 78% of cybersecurity professionals believe that businesses are not prepared enough to deal with these type of attacks. So some figures there worth considering.
And that's certainly something that as a business, when we're talking to our customers, either existing or prospective new customers, it's a feeling we get in terms of the knowledge and the preparation within a business to actually understand what the potential threats are and to be ready to deal with them, which is why we're putting so much effort into trying to educate our customers and make sure we have the right products in place to be able to protect them and offer them. A couple of incidents here that are worthy of note. These are just the two most recent ones. For me, one of the scary things is that actually there are so many large breaches, and I would say Arnold Clark and Post Office or Royal Mail, who are listed here. There's so many of these large ones that all you need to do is, once you're 3 or 4 months in, we're all tending to forget the big ones that happened earlier in the year. So Arnold Clark, I think household name in the UK. Their systems went down just before Christmas, and that forced all of their systems online. They couldn't deliver new cars, cost them a huge amount of money, and they only just came back online, I think, in the last week or so. Is that right, Ewan?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Arnold Clark is probably the highlight here out of the two, and it was only just released this morning that it was reported that there's 457 gigabytes of data released, exfiltrated into the dark web. Now, that means that there's customer information, invoices, all sorts of material is now out there, and these are the things that we all need to be aware of, and we don't want to have replicated in our businesses as well. But it just goes to show that these are two larger organisations that I think it's fair to say than everybody here that weren't prepared for this. And again, that's what these type of webinars and awareness is all about. It's just being prepared for these types of things to happen. And these are the full extent of these haven't been released yet. The ICO is still, I think, doing a debrief through the two businesses, which we'll hear about in the coming weeks. But again, it's just to show the example of organisations with larger budgets are still not capable of dealing with these sort of incidents properly.
And for me, again, one thing that forget about the business that we're in terms of trying to win new business as a managed service provider. If we can help educate business owners, business leaders, and users about threats that are out there and why it's relevant to them, and so everybody in this webinar, then if we stop one cyber attack, or when we prevent one cyber attack because of something that somebody learns here, that's a massive step forward, and that justifies the webinar and everybody's involvement in it. And again, I think what's worthwhile everybody being aware of, and this is something you can take back to all of your own employees if you're running a business, is that smaller businesses are often used as a route into larger organizations. So supply chain attacks. If your organization that you work for, if they provide any sort of products or services to a larger company who in turn provides products or services to Honor Clark or the post office or anyone else, then that is often a route that can be used to try and get to the biggies. So again, something I think is just really, really worth bearing in mind. And if the one takeaway again from today's webinar is that is something that people become aware of, great. I think we've helped do our job. Some trends for 2023, and these are not good trends. That first one, Ewan, I think is the one that scares me the most, ransomware as a service.
Yes, so unfortunately this is now a thing. It was first reported back in the summer, end of last year, that there's now a platform out there kind of similar to the concept of kind of MailChimp or Mailgun that you might use for your business for marketing purposes. This has now been designed for something similar, but to compromise businesses. So very, very scary, and it makes it very automated for bad actors. Again, using that kind of scattergun approach to send phishing emails out to businesses and hope that one comes through, and that could have a high reward for them. MFA uptake is slowly improving, but providers are now enabling MFA out of the box, which is good to see. If you're intending on going through Cyber Essentials or renewing this year, MFA is to be enforced throughout the business applications, not just the core line of business applications. So anything you have on the cloud at all, everything has to be MFA enabled, which goes without saying. Zero Trust is another methodology, like all other security, that's came from the enterprise space, that's going to come into the SME space. You'll start to see advice being given this year about what it is and how to start thinking about implementing it into your business, because it will be something that we will adopt. We won't go through it today, but it's something just to be aware that will be coming. The human link in the security chain is becoming a top concern for security pros and businesses. The example shown earlier, like the Arnold Clark situation, will have a very high likelihood that a human was tricked into enabling the attack that happened inside the business, and that's just the way it is. EDR is beginning to replace traditional antivirus. We have a slide coming up on that in a few moments, and we're already starting to see cybersecurity gaps in the industry where pros are required with their skills to protect all these businesses, but unfortunately with the rise in cybersecurity incidents, that is not being matched by cybersecurity professionals coming into the industry to prevent these. So there is going to be gaps that are going to appear, unfortunately.
And again, for me, from this particular slide, I think what everyone can take away from it, and this is not a good takeaway, but it's one we need to be aware of, is just the ransomware as a service. It's big business, criminal business, but it's still big business out there. And the more alert and aware everyone can be of the threats out there, the more you can help reduce that risk, along with just listening to the advice from any cybersecurity professional, any MSP that you're speaking to. If they're offering you improved and increased security, they're not just trying to make money, they're trying to just reduce that risk of an attack, because the last thing we want to see for any customers or their users. So here's our suggested top 5 cybersecurity resolutions for 2023. Use multi-factor authentication wherever possible. It's probably the single most important thing that'll help reduce that risk of one of your accounts being compromised. Passwords, no matter how complex, or not no matter how complex, but passwords can be compromised. The more complex, the better. But multi-factor authentication just means there's something else like your mobile phone or authenticator app that reduces the risk of that. Number two, don't fall for phishing attempts. Don't trust any email that comes in, especially if it's not one that you're expecting. Assume that everybody's out there to get you. Don't want to make it sound paranoid, but I think that's the level you've got to go for. Business emails in particular, just reread everything if it's not a usual email that you're expecting. Backup. There's an assumption, I think, across all of business and probably personal as well, that with everything in the cloud, you don't need to back things up. That's wrong. As Ewan's just alluded to with Arnold Clark there, the 400 plus gigabytes of data was removed from their systems. If a hacker or a criminal element gets into your systems, not only can they copy the data out, but they can just remove it altogether so you don't have it. You still need a backup. Ewan, I'll let you pick up on the last two because I know you spend a lot of time on them and you've probably got more knowledge than me. It's on those particular areas.
Yeah, we've got a couple of slides coming up on that in a second, so we'll elaborate on those then. But yeah, getting Cyber Essentials certified and intelligent endpoint protection are the next levels for businesses that have been around for a while. Again, like I said, I've used some things like traditional antivirus and want to take cyber security seriously. The best way to do that is to go through the Cyber Essentials program. It's very, very cost effective and it demonstrates a few things which we'll mention in a second.
Yeah, and I think on the last one, the intelligent endpoint protection. So I think everybody's probably aware of antivirus. Antivirus software is generally reactive. Something happens, it finds it, and it tries to mitigate it. The new products out there will actually be more aware and almost proactive in terms of how they work, and it's just an evolution and an improvement because of the threats out there on the protection that's available. So multi-factor authentication. It's the one thing that we as a business and as all the members of our team have seen as being the most effective way of reducing risk, and the fact that multi-factor authentication uses, sorry, just go back a slide there, uses this either an authenticator app or a mobile phone for you to verify who you are, makes it just an extremely secure way of reducing that risk. As we see there, MFA can prevent over 95% of bulk phishing attempts and 75% of target attacks. Those are big numbers. And if you work for an organization that doesn't have MFA in place on their business email, it's one of the first things that we've certainly been pushing out and actually forcing a lot of our customers to move on to. There seems to be traditionally a little bit of resistance to, do we have to use an app? Do we have to have this process to slow things down? But it's definitely one of the most effective ways of reducing risk to compromise of not just your business email, but to other applications in the business as well. Sorry, slipped across there. So why use it? Look, I mean, the stats should say all that we need to say. So in 2020, so the year of the pandemic, COVID-19 really impacting businesses, 150,000 MFA, brute force attacks a day. Now we're looking at a million. So the volume of these have increased significantly over the last 2 years. If you don't have MFA in place, you're at extreme risk of compromise. Unfortunately, we have seen it with some of our customers because not every business application has MFA. Even though we push it, we need to have customer agreement for it. As I say, we got to the point within our business where we started forcing upon customers because the risk was so severe that even if it caused inconvenience to their users, better to have that than the business actually get compromised in itself. Phishing. So phishing emails, again, I think everybody on this webinar and every business will be aware of phishing emails out there. And phishing emails are aimed at people, and people are inherently, unfortunately, the least secure part of any business. So staff are your biggest security risk, because human beings are human beings, and we don't always follow logic. And there we are, ransomware attacks doubled in 2022. It's going to continue into this year. And the next poly, when was the last time you saw a phishing email in your inbox? 1 day ago, 1 week ago, 1 month ago, or never? I very much doubt that anyone has never seen a phishing attack. Ewan, have you got anything you want to sort of input on that?
Yeah, ransomware attacks are on the trend, and will continue going forward, and they have been ever since the ransomware kind of came on the scene, kind of 6 or 7 years ago, mainstream. Phishing attacks can cause the most havoc, as it can lead to ransomware being deployed, universal credentials being stolen, usernames and passwords and things like that, and then used on other services that you might use personally, even potentially, or ultimately a fraudulent payment being made, and that's the worst case scenario. Attackers are gathering more and more information about us on the web to create more sophisticated and personalized attacks on kind of key individuals inside the business, whether it be CEOs, managing directors, financial controllers, kind of key linchpins where the money may flow through. Yeah, a big risk there. Employees generally are viewed as the weak link in the security chain, because most incidents actually involve an unknowing human being, and that might be the recipient of a phishing email, somebody who they communicate regularly with, whether it's a supplier or a credit controller or something like that. All it takes is for somebody to be either in the middle of that or impersonating that person for money to easily exfiltrate the business in a fraudulent way. So don't fall for phishing. Easier said than done, but there are ways that we can help with that.
Yeah, and certainly within our business as a managed service provider, the phishing email compromise is the most common way we see businesses being either compromised or where the threats are. So can't underestimate it. Social engineering attacks, it's saying, are becoming more common and sophisticated. So it doesn't take a huge amount for any of us to go onto LinkedIn, look at some profiles, find out who the financial director or senior finance person is within the business, or the CEO, and then do some engineering in the background to create false accounts under any email provider, and to try and then to use that to dupe either a supplier or a customer or a member of staff that's related to the person that we've done some research on, and try and get a compromise. Now, that old thing about the old adage of the attackers only need to be lucky once. As a business, you need to be lucky all the time in terms of time to protect yourself. And again, if all that anyone takes away from this is an increased awareness of the security they need to have in place, and the conversations they need to have internally with their staff, or with whoever is their managed service provider, or a security consultant that they know in terms of IT, then I think we're doing a job, and we're helping just to hopefully recognise and reduce that risk. In terms of the why are staff falling for phishing, as Ewan just said, it's easier said than done. Evolving threats, so stolen credentials on the dark web, using Arnold Clark as the example. If a huge amount of information, customer information, has been taken from Arnold Clark's databases, they're selling cars, there'll be credit information and so on potentially. That information gets sold on the dark web, and that can be used by criminals to then go down this, do their social engineering. Lack of training. something that we've pushed quite hard, Ewan, in terms of some of the products we use to help educate users?
Yeah, because it's a combination. Phishing is a combination of these three things. So yeah, evolving threats that are coming through, new technology and new methods that bad actors are using to get, in direct contact with users. The lack of training on the most common threat types is a big issue. Simply knowing how to spot a phishing email can significantly reduce that risk level. And users which are not guided by simple security policies and procedures make the risk of compromise high. So if you have something in place that can deal with all of these, then that can significantly reduce that threat.
And just the poll that we asked there, when's the last time you saw a phishing email in your inbox? The vast majority of people, either the last day or within the last week, have seen phishing emails coming into their inbox. They're there all the time. And as I say, yes, we might be aware of them, but all you need to do is fall for one of these phishing emails, and that potentially is a cost to you and the business that you're in. Or if it's personal, click on one wrong link coming into your Gmail or your Yahoo or your Hotmail account, and that could cause you a personal loss of some kind. So we've just got to be vigilant and aware all the time. User awareness training, we've just mentioned that, cannot be underestimated. We run it internally within SoConnect. Every member of staff has to complete their social awareness training, and there's generally a small 15-question training course will come out once a month, and everybody learns something from it. We should never be complacent about the knowledge that you can gain by just answering the questions and going through them. That's something I know that you've pushed hard, Ewan.
Yeah, because the best way to mitigate the threats on the previous slide is to implement a user awareness training solution. And there's a few out there, but the tool that we use has the features that we recommend to businesses that apply with the best practices when it comes to educating staff. And that's to have a personalized learning program to cover all areas of cybersecurity. And there's actually a lot of areas within cybersecurity, from password management to knowledge about public Wi-Fi and how to browse the web safely. And there's about 30 or 40 different kind of categories. Having a regular email phishing testing and managing the results of that. So actually looking at the resilience of your staff and how they can spot phishing emails themselves and marking that and improving it and having a plan to that. Monitoring the dark web, so using your domain name, whatever your business domain name is, searching that in the dark web to see what credentials might exist out there, and then kind of taking a reactive response to that to remediate those results by simply changing passwords and all that, all the kind of information that could be out there in the dark web. And a simple policy management system to keep staff informed of the rules. And again, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. It's just making them aware that they need to use MFA, they need to use a complex password, what things they can browse safely online, all those sorts of things. And with all those four kind of key areas combined, you can come up with a very, very simple and resilient program for staff to follow.
Yeah, and I think that's a key thing within any business is that policy getting distributed amongst staff, and making staff aware that if they make a mistake, if they think they've been compromised, not to be afraid to talk about that, because it's in the best interest of the business to just make sure that that's discussed, that whoever's responsible for security, whether it's somebody internally or an MSP, that they know if something's happened so that they can then go and do something to mitigate it. And that starts with training and a policy and a culture within a business, I suppose, to ensure that people actually understand that they're not necessarily going to get in huge amount of trouble if they fall for a phishing attempt. It can happen to all sorts of people at all sorts of levels and almost any business. So I think that's really, really key point there. Backup. So I mentioned before, I think there's probably a little bit of a misunderstanding just now across the board that everything that's in the cloud is safe and doesn't need to be backed up. Hopefully some of the things we've talked about just now and over the last sort of half hour or so have indicated and shown that data, just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean it's safe, and you can't ever make an assumption that anything you buy direct from a supplier like Google or Microsoft is being backed up and is safe just because it's their provider of the service. Third-party backup provider is always something we would recommend. So you're not relying on just the provider of that particular service. So, for example, we provide Microsoft 365 services to almost all of our customers. We use Acronis, which is a well-known backup provider, to back up all of our Microsoft data. Now, there are 101 different backup providers up there. This is just a company that we particularly chose. However, the point is that it means you've got a third-party solution, so the data is stored completely out with any Microsoft environment, and in the event of us having to recover data, we can do that quite simply and easily because of what we have set up as an MSP. Lots of MSPs do a similar thing, but I think it's the point here is that you need to have them there. So, example here in the slide, if you buy a new house, you've got to insure it. If you have a car, you're legally obliged to insure it, but you wouldn't want to have an expensive car and not have it insured anyway, because if it gets crashed or if it's stolen, then you need to be able to replace it. You should be treating the data in exactly the same way, because let's face it, data's often more valuable than the physical sort of assets that we have. So backups are sorted. So here's some mistakes that businesses make: failing to store backup data at a separate physical site or in a third-party site, a third-party provider, as I've just mentioned. Not auditing backups for freshness and integrity. So that's to make sure, one, that they're happening, and two, that they're actually all the data that's being backed up is in a good state. So leaving RAID. So RAID is a disk format that protects data that's spread across a number of hard drives. That's not a backup. That's just one way of making a server more resilient. There are still a lot of businesses that have physical servers in their offices. Those servers still need backed up, and even once the data on those servers gets migrated to the cloud, they still need to be backed up from the cloud. So if you're a company that's got SharePoint Online, for example, do you have that backed up? If you don't, I would go and ask whoever's providing your IT managed services just to make sure. And if it isn't, I would get that in place. And just the single backup approach. So we've talked about the third-party solution. A lot of, so SharePoint, for example, will have a version history of data. That's not a backup in itself, but it does mean that if you have a corrupted document, you can go back to a previous version. But you still want to be able to get a backup from another source in case there's some kind of compromise. Anything you want to add to there, Ewan, that I've missed, or have we covered it?
Last thing I would probably add to that is just your testing frequency. It's a very common term in our industry. Your backup is only as good as your last test. So you need to make sure there's some sort of frequency for testing the data that you are backing up to make sure that it can be used when it is restored and when you actually need it. Hopefully you never actually need it, but you want to make sure that it is actually there if you do need to depend on it.
So our cloud backup solutions are just covering them very briefly here. Why are you doing it? Protect against cyber attacks. All you need is you can access your data from anywhere. One of the many benefits of being in the cloud, that if you're working abroad or even you're on holiday and you're doing a bit of work abroad, you can get access to that data, including the backed up data, from anywhere. And again, being in the cloud means that your backup is stored in a data center and the cost that you pay, and again, these are usually ongoing managed recurring costs. You pay that cost and there's no additional cost for any other hardware. If there's a problem, we restore your data from the data center that's getting backed up to the device that you're sitting on, that they're using. If you have a device stolen, we get a replacement device to you, we restore the data onto that device. So cyber certification, why should a business have a cyber essentials? So the National Cyber Intelligence Service, NCIS, have had a look at the threats to the businesses in the UK. Cyber Essentials is an entry-level resilience certification that they believe all businesses should have to help reduce the threats to a business and help just about risk reduction. No managed service provider, no IT company can say they're going to take away all risk. All we can do is reduce risk, and the way to reduce that risk is to implement these 5 simple controls to help protect your business against the common threats and get that accreditation that shows your suppliers and your customers that you really take the security of your data seriously. I'll hand over to you, Ewan, just to go through the 5 controls.
Yeah, so firewalls and gateways, they're your points of entry to the internet. So if they become compromised, obviously that affects everything inside your local network. So ensuring that they're firstly a supported device, they're kept up to date, and they abide by some basic administration controls, again, can significantly help a breach. User access controls, mainly when it comes to administrator privileges, to ensure that your users and staff don't have more rights to software and devices than what's actually required for their business role. Quite a simple but very effective way to mitigate a compromise. Secure configuration, so making sure that, again, the rest of the devices and software have met a kind of minimum standard to remove unnecessary accounts and services and things like that. So semi kind of approaching a zero trust approach there. Malware protection, again, a very basic fundamental antivirus is needed for that. We recommend endpoint detection and response, but to make sure that there's some software on endpoints that can recognize malicious software by quarantining or removing it. And lastly is making sure you have a regular patch cycle, so keeping your devices, whether they're Mac or they're Windows, to make sure that they're kept up to date with the latest kind of manufacturer software, because as most software patches come down these days to devices, they're mostly security related now rather than kind of feature rich. And as well as that, third-party patch management as well. So obviously you'll have a lot of software on these devices, whether it be browsers or applications or what have you, to make sure that they're kept up to date to kind of avoid zero-day attacks as well. So with a combination of those 5, that's the minimum again that we recommend, but we actually recommend more than that. But this is what's required to basically pass Cyber Essentials.
So here we have the 2 levels. We've got Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. Cyber Essentials, as Ewan just said, that's what is seen now as the entry level. So it's that minimum level that all businesses should be trying to achieve to reduce the risk to their businesses, and for the relatively low cost, having that in place should give all businesses a real bit of comfort that they've at least taken those first steps to becoming a lot more resilient. Cyber Essentials Plus is the main point of this is it's independently tested. So all the controls are put in place and then looked at from a third party to ensure that the controls that are in place are actually doing the job properly and they're audited. Again, as an MSP, because we're pushing Cyber Essentials, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we have the Plus certification, which we do, and that's something that we're trying to push to all our customers. Ewan, have got anything to add to that?
Yeah, so Cyber Essentials is the foundation of these two plans. Cyber Essentials is a verified self-assessment. Most businesses will obviously lean to kind of companies like ourselves, a managed service provider or a security partner, to do the assessment on their behalf, which is fine. Organisation complete self-assessment questionnaire to confirm the 5 controls are in place, like we mentioned in the previous slide. And the responses are reviewed by an assessor before submission. So to look at the evidence that's provided, to obviously avoid things like marking your own homework and that kind of thing. The Plus is the next level above. Plus is either if you want to meet some sort of criteria might be for government contracts or anything like that, or if you want to just take that extra step to show that you take cybersecurity an extra level seriously, as it's independently tested. There is some testing that is done on your network, and it is audited by an external assessor.
Okay, thank you. So getting cyber certified, as we say, it's reassuring your customers that you're working to secure your IT against cyber attacks. Some government and private sector tenders and organisations will require it. You have an understanding of your cyber policy and your security level. It helps educate the business owners about where they are, and their cyber insurance cover as well, up to £25,000. One key thing about cyber certification, just stay on this slide just now. One key thing about this is not just getting Cyber Essentials certified, but maintaining that certification level. There are tools that we provide to the business, and I'm sure our other MSPs do as well, that will sit on your machines and monitor them to make sure that they stay compliant throughout the period of certification. Again, just to ensure that the risk is mitigated, because you may find that if you're not maintaining that the certification levels that are required, if you want to make an insurance claim, it might not pay out. But even just having that insurance cover adds a little bit of reassurance, and I only say a little bit because nobody wants to have a compromise in the first place, but it gives a little bit of reassurance to you that you've got some sort of cover should something happen. Intelligent endpoint detection. So endpoint detection response, or EDR as it's known, it's an advancement to that traditional antivirus product, and I'm going to pass this one straight on to you and as our technical specialist to talk a bit more. Yeah, so most of you will obviously know about antivirus, and it's been around for 20 plus years now, and its function has been to identify and quarantine any malicious code that's been discovered on your device on the back of a quick scan or a full scan of your device. And I'm sure you've had that in the past, where you've noticed that your device has been running slow in the past, and it's generally when antivirus is running and doing a kind of deep scan. So EDR has that functionality, but also has some extra intelligence to it. So like we mentioned earlier, as threats have been evolving, threats have been looking to obviously bypass antivirus, which antivirus is triggered on the back of malicious signatures in software on your computers. So EDR looks more at the behavior of malicious threats that are coming into your machine, whether it be lateral movements across the network, so from endpoint to endpoint, or if there's been a sequence of events that are happening on your computer that are suspicious. It uses behavioral AI to recognize these threats and kind of take effective action. So either by quarantining the device on the network, or disabling it
for performing any other functions, and then performing a rollback if it is indeed infected. So it basically takes care of what we would traditionally do as the kind of first and second steps with traditional antivirus. EDR will take care of that for us automatically for us in case a device does become compromised, and prevents it from spreading throughout the network, potentially affecting dozens or hundreds of machines. Because we have to be aware that we are going, all our businesses will be intruded in some way in future, and we have to accept that. And having advanced solutions like this that can deal with this on our behalf without a human being intervening, if we can, could potentially reduce that risk. And we've already seen that when using this software in the last year, where it's came into fruition and dealt with circumstances that might have been too late if we had been using traditional antivirus.
And yeah, if there's anyone on the webinar old enough to remember back 10, 15 years ago when antivirus was still really getting pushed really hard, and you had McAfee and Norton and all the rest of it, and some people didn't bother with antivirus because they weren't really sure if it was worth the money. I would say it's now standard, and a lot of the products that you buy, so Microsoft, for example, have got Windows Defender, that's built into their operating system now. This is just the next evolution of that. So this is just an improvement in the protection that's provided. And as Ian says, it's a lot more intelligent. There's a cost to it. There's a cost to the EDR solutions. They're all a bit more expensive than traditional antivirus, but that's because they're doing a more intelligent job and effectively reducing the risk. So as we see here, we've got visibility, protection, insight, and fast remediation. Ewan's kind of covered all of those bits already.
Yeah. So yeah, real-time visibility to help identify malicious activity quickly. So, like as I mentioned, being able to identify steps that are happening on the machine, that might be under the scenes that users might not be aware of. The software can be aware of that. Detect the activity even with unknown threat types. So anything that even the software might not fully recognize as malicious, it has the ability to let a human being know that something might be going on, and again, potentially take a very quick reactive measure. Get more insight about the business, about the endpoints and what's happening within the business, and it can be tailored and adjusted for any business needs. But again, getting this information on the fly or monthly reports, I think, is invaluable. Fast remediation, and like I said, like I've mentioned earlier, the ability for the software to react on behalf of a human being to limit something active going on, again, is invaluable, because it could be too late if you don't have something like that in place. It doesn't take long from an endpoint to be compromised to the entire network being compromised. It can happen very, very quickly, and having something like that in place is invaluable.
Thanks, Ewan. So ongoing compliance, we have to talk about the products that we've provided, because as SoConnect has grown and our customer base have grown, it's been incumbent upon us to look at the levels of protection that we offer our customers. So we've got a basic, standard, and advanced security packs that we offer our customers. The basic will allow the business to be compliant with Cyber Essentials. We do see that as a very basic level, and for us as a business, it's the minimum level that we'll require for all of our customers. The standard pack is the one that we know will provide the level of protection that will suit most businesses, and provide them with a good level of protection to mitigate the majority of threats that we are aware of, either through what comes into our service desk or what we read about within industry, and it's there to really reduce that risk as much as possible for users or business networks to become victim of cybercrime. The advanced pack has been introduced just recently, and Ewan will input onto this, and I'll let him have his input in a second. But this is again, aimed at companies that have got either compliance requirements from their industry to catch threats coming in, or just businesses that have got maybe extremely high levels, high value data or IP that they want to protect from the vast amount of prying eyes out there in the dark web. Ewan, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so we've kind of tailored these packages to accommodate all walks of life in terms of businesses. Started from the very bottom with the basic, which is the minimum that's required to get you through Cyber Essentials. And this is what it's all been underpinned by, is to make sure that we can encourage businesses to get through the certification. And obviously, as you walk up to the standard and advanced packs, what's going to happen is, you won't gain anything extra in terms of Cyber Essentials, but you will further reduce the risk all the way up to the advanced pack, which you can see has a SOC. So a SOC is a Security Operations Center, which is 24/7, which is a team of certified human beings that we have that will monitor what your EDR is doing, what your logging and auditing system is doing, and what your Office 365 is doing. Things such as the example of users potentially logging in online in different countries, which is actually, a big threat, and that's why we encourage multi-factor authentication to be enabled, because when users log in from different parts of the world, you as business owners and your staff are not going to be able to see that, and it might be something simply as somebody logging in when they're on holiday or something like that. But if somebody gets in from one of the known threat countries of the world, shall we say, that often goes unseen, and that's where a lot of these solutions can come in place. And again, it's all about minimizing the impact, and whether, like Gordon mentioned, whether it's IP, whether it's your customer data, or eventually leading to reputational damage. I think that's a combination of the Arnold Clark situation that's going on just now. These solutions, if they're in place, will mitigate all of that.
Absolutely, and this approach is starting to be adopted by many MSPs in the industry, and I think what it demonstrates is the attention and awareness to user and company security that is developing and increasing, and that for us, that's all we want. We want customers and businesses to be more aware of the security requirements they need to have in place within their businesses, so that they can better protect themselves from the threats that are out there, because they're only going to increase. And the one takeaway I just want everyone to come away from today is that increased awareness, and hopefully some of the information that we've shared throughout the slides over the last just under an hour have helped educate, inform, and assist anyone that's been good enough to attend to go away with and take back to their businesses.